Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our live stream this evening. First of all, I want to repeat my usual mantra about many of you have been coming to me about problems that you're having in relation to corruption. And I'm sorry that I haven't been able to respond to you. And I know that you're worn out fighting the system. But I have, and I've said this many times before, that I don't believe that we're going to be able to solve the individual cases. And I know some of the stories you've been sending me and cases and things that have happened to you at the hands of the Gardaí, at the hands of the courts, at the hands of TUSLA. They're absolutely horrific, and I have no doubt that they are true. But I really don't believe that until we actually change the system, that we are going to make any progress. Fighting individual cases is just a means of breaking people down, wearing them down. That's what they want to do. So what I'm advising people to do is certainly tell your own story on Facebook, do whatever you can in that regard. But really, it's time for people, rather than fighting the actual individual cases, which are going to get people nowhere, because Leo Varadkar and his cronies, his globalist cult, are not going to wake up one day and say, sorry, we actually need to start listening to the people. We saw what he said at the weekend. He said, I am the European Union. That's what he said, as if we are completely irrelevant to him, and we are irrelevant to him. So I have to stress again, there is no point in trying to fight the system. The system has to change. So I'm sorry I'm not getting back to you in relation to many of the emails that you've been sending me. And it's not that I don't feel the pain that you're in, because I know it's horrific what people are going through. But the local elections are coming up, and people have to make a decision. Are they going to stand? They will get elected if they stand on an anti-corruption, anti-globalist ticket. They will walk in, I believe. But the parties are gathering pace at the moment. They're all planning, they will be getting their leaflets out and their posters up very soon. So, if you don't stand yourself or encourage others to stand, you will get, what we've had. The status quo will continue. So, amazing Polly is joining me from Ontario, Canada this evening. Sorry, thanks for waiting. Good to see you, Polly.
Oh, good. Good to see you too.
Well, we were just chatting before we started the live stream, and we were saying that, how we keep feeling we've reached peak insanity, and then something more insane happens. So tonight we're going to be discussing how we believe that sustainable development and all of this speak around the globalist speak that they use around all this sustainable development nonsense is really, it's just another form of communism. We are living now in a totalitarian technocracy, where individual freedoms are being taken from us every day. And Polly is the absolute expert in this. But to my mind, there is no difference between what is happening in Ireland and what is happening in Canada at the moment. I mean, it's just like a mirror image when we discuss what's going on in our respective countries, Polly. But just a couple of the things there we were talking about. Today's big story is that insects are on the brink of extinction, apparently. So this is to create major panic. What? No insects? But there was also some other insanity over the weekend relating to the jailing of a person on Twitter who said on Twitter that a transgender man, was a woman. So she said that.
Well, they called them, it was a transgender woman.
Woman.
So that means a woman with a penis, just in case you're trying to keep track.
Thank you for that. Nothing to laugh about, but we have to sort of release the insanity, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, so she had the audacity to say that a transgender woman is a man.
Yeah.
And she ended up in prison for this. This is 2019. It's hard to believe that this could happen. But everything they told us in Hollywood, everything we saw in those Hollywood movies is coming to pass. And this is what these people do, Polly, isn't it? That they reveal in advance, and then they, can excuse themselves.
Yeah, I was listening to your stream with, I've forgotten his name, Nils?
The
guy
Mads,
from
the Danish banker, Mads Paslik, yeah.
Yeah, and he made a point that I'd never considered before, because you guys were talking about the pre-warning of us. It's because that is a big question. Why do they seem to telegraph what they're going to do, and then we laugh it off, or we think it's science fiction, but then it comes to pass? Why do they always tell us? And he was talking about, it's sort of like for karma. If they tell you and you don't fight back and you don't say no, then it's equivalent to giving permission. And so, if you're going to look at it from a karma point of view, well, they've done what all they needed to do, which is warn you and tell you. And I think that's where we all need to start getting our heads around, is that if we don't actively say no, then we are saying yes. Silence is consent. And there's too much going on right now. As you said, it's getting warp speed, very strange. People going to jail for correctly identifying someone as either a man or a woman. That's crazy. The UN pretending that we're all going to die. They're fear-mongering to the nth degree. 12-year deadline we have, right? And it all comes down to giving them trillions of dollars. If we give them trillions of dollars, we won't all die. I mean, this is the level of insanity we're living with. And I think if the mainstream media weren't controlled the way that it is, we would all be able to talk about it and see how crazy these schemes are, and they would die on the vine. I mean, they wouldn't get a single thing, they wouldn't get one single agenda item passed if we were allowed to talk about it like rational adults. But they're keeping the conversation at these levels of hysteria, and the mainstream media won't let opposing views in. In Canada, we're to the point where political candidates, legitimate political candidates, cannot join in the debate because their opinions run counter to the globalist agenda. So I don't know how we can break through, but we have to start making our voices heard, to say no, not just let them have consent through our silence, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think the reason they are in such a panic now, and they're ratcheting up their agenda, is because they see what is happening in France, in Italy, and in Spain. I mean, some of the scenes in Spain over the weekend, which I believe were completely written out of the mainstream media, of course. But, I mean, it appears hundreds of thousands of people coming on to the streets of Madrid and Spanish cities to proclaim Spanish sovereignty and to try to reclaim it. Now, when you have the three big Mediterranean European countries saying no to Germany, it's getting quite frightening for the globalist cabal. I think it is, and that's why they're ratcheting up. And I see it. I'm not sure if it's the same. I'm sure it's the same with you, but you see it when you start to notice it, Polly. You see it everywhere. Like, I live in a very quiet suburb, and I am hearing sirens now where they were never heard. And I actually think this is all part of the inducing panic. We had another weather warning here. Every few weeks we get them, and it's all about, panic, induce fear in the population.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about just those day-to-day things, like you're mentioning, sirens and weather warnings. That's an excellent point. I was just at the grocery store this morning talking to the checkout lady, and she was saying that her grandkids have been off school 8 days already in February. What are we at, the 15th or something? Because of weather, because of bad weather. I mean, this never happened when I was a kid. Maybe once every couple of years there would be weather that was bad enough to make us stay home. And the weather hasn't changed. So it's obviously the panic, like you say, like the attitude of the school board. And that's so subtle, isn't it? but it puts into the minds of the parents, like, this is unusual. This, we need to do something about this. We can't have, I can't be taking 8 days a month off of work because my kids can't go to school. You know what I'm saying? It puts the pressure on at all these subtle levels to just accept the climate change agenda or whatever. Just go along with it. Interesting.
Completely. And I noticed a lot of overhead activity, helicopters, and like, and you just feel, are they trying to create this sense of panic? Now we want to talk about sustainable development, though, and how it is just a byword for this totalitarian technocracy. And we have a lot of it in advertising here at the moment, where they're using words like smart. I think Aer Lingus, our national airline, which has just recently, in a disgusting development, turned our lovely green planes white. They've actually painted them white, which I think is one of the colors of globalism. But this is this is yet another sign that we're no longer Irish. Really, green is our color. We're taking away our green, and we're becoming sort of using the color of the globalist agenda. But they have sort of joined forces with one of our banks here, Bank of Ireland, and they're using all of these smart cards. And then there's an advertising campaign, which I've seen a lot on buses, using Jennifer Aniston talking about smart is the new sexy. So they're using this terminology, and it's all about smart cities. Tell us a little bit about this whole ideology, will you, Polly, because you're the expert.
Oh, stop saying that. I'm just learning just like you. But smart is a buzzword everyone should avoid, just in my personal opinion. They are doing smart everything: smart meters, smart homes, smart cars, and now the smart city. And in Canada, they want to make a section of Toronto a smart city. And they're working directly with Google and the company Alphabet that I've talked about before. Eric Schmidt used to be the CEO of Google, and he was very, very excited about this Toronto Smart City project. And he said, thank you for letting us take the reins. What it really comes down to is they're going to be putting this Internet of Things technology in every aspect of the city, and therefore track all of the energy inputs, all of the use. They sell it to the people as if it's going to be really handy. Like some robot will come along and empty the garbage if it gets full. And, they will automatically de-ice sidewalks because the smart technology will let them know there's an icy patch. But really, and this comes directly from a guy called Jim Balsillie, who actually worked with the UN and owned BlackBerry, which is a huge tech company in Canada. He wrote about Toronto's smart city, that this is extremely dangerous, that people are making a huge mistake rushing into signing these contracts with these big tech companies, because they don't understand that giving away that much data and that much IP ownership, intellectual property, to global companies will be the creation of a total surveillance state. This comes from a guy, like I said, who worked with the UN and has his own tech. So he's no slouch. He knows what he's talking about, and he is warning us not to go ahead with this. But I'm sure our leaders will go ahead anyway, because their agenda is so united with the globalist agendas, just like in Ireland. Our government has been captured by the ideologues.
Yeah, and I mean, at the core of this is depopulation. And we're looking at 6 billion they want to get rid of. They want to bring the population down to, I think, about 600 million. And be no doubt, it's there. It's written everywhere when you start to look into it. So the idea is that they drive people out of rural areas. They're doing that in Ireland. They're doing it in Canada. They've got a much bigger problem in Canada, obviously, but we see it in Ireland, how they're, shutting everything down in local small villages so that people don't have the means of meeting and have any need to go into their local village, and they feel more and more isolated. They're constructing industrial wind turbines. They're destroying our woodlands. They are, mining. Yeah. Well, yes, exactly. Up in the Sperrins, that's something we're going to have a look at. There, intensive farming is becoming more and more the norm, and small landholders are finding it difficult, obviously, to sustain themselves. I hate even using that word now, but so sustainable development is the exact opposite. It's not sustainable at all, but it's about driving people into these smart cities. Then they can control them. Then they can dictate everything they do, the food they eat, the people they speak to. They can monitor it all, and that's where it's clearly heading. I mean,
that is where it's clearly heading. It sounds like science fiction to hear Gemma say it. Like it does sound like paranoid rantings, but this is the plan. You have to read enough of what they've written for going back 40 years, or more. This was the plan. They want everybody out of the countryside. They basically want the super dense cities with everybody living in very small units, identical units. Mm-hmm. I mean, just picture it like a factory floor for people, because that is where they're going. And they know they can't do it with all of us. Like Gemma said, I don't know why I'm talking like you're not here. Like you said, Gemma, the population has to come down drastically for them to succeed at this. And I mean, I don't know if it's a process of slowly, this sounds so paranoid, I know, but slowly degrading our health so our life expectancies are much lower through things like vaccines and terrible additives in the food and water and air, or if they're planning a civil war from the tension that this is going to cause in every country. Like, as you said, in Spain, in France, people are out on the streets and they're not going quietly. So I don't know how they're planning to cut the population, but it is essential part of their plan.
I think it's a range of issues. I mean, the ultimate objective is to create a war, which they will do in Europe without a doubt, because of the insane multicultural projects that they're dumping on sovereign states and destroying their national identities. I mean, they know that that's bound to create war, and that's when they always make their money. It is as a result of war. But the depopulation idea is it's not that the planet cannot sustain the 7 billion people it has on it. It can, and more. Yeah. This planet has been here how long? 45 billion years. And these people come along, over a period of 30, 40 years and suddenly make a decision that, we have to change everything about the way we live and go against nature in everything they do.
Way. And this, I think, is why we're so uncomfortable. The younger kids, I think even the younger kids are feeling it now. They have interfered in every natural aspect of our lives, and we are natural beings. And like you say, I totally agree with you. We have more than enough to sustain us here on Earth. Their idea of sustainability is a lie. It's an inversion, like everything else they say. I think it was you sent me something maybe about the idea that the total contradiction between them loading up the Western countries with people from the third world, while at the same time telling the first world we have to be more sustainable, we have to live more simply, we don't have enough resources, we have to scale back. And meanwhile, they're importing millions of people into our country. I mean, it's exactly backwards. What are they even doing? How can anyone take them seriously? I find it really hard to believe anyone can keep this level of cognitive dissonance, that it requires to swallow their stories.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, Canada is one thing. Is it the biggest or the second biggest country in the world? I never know. Is Russia or Canada?
I think it's second biggest still. I think Russia still beats us. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Dare I even mention the word? But I mean, when they think that Ireland can sustain 65 million, that is the plan for Ireland. And it's there written in an EU document. If you don't believe me, I'll post it again. But, the idea that a tiny island like Ireland could sustain 65 million, it can barely sustain, it can't sustain its current, it could sustain its current population, but it's it's just nonsensical that they would be planning this for Ireland. We
Right.
understand, that there's like the planet can sustain the population that it has and more, but not concentrating it all on the continent of Europe, which is what they're planning to do at the moment,
Right.
because we have open borders and the Europeans are proving to be very tolerant. Not so much anymore. They're wakening up to it. But this has even been that the UN has actually admitted to the fact that the global warming agenda is really about destroying capitalism. I mean, they have said this. This was said by a UN official, Christiana Figueres, at a news conference in Brussels a couple of years ago, where she said, this is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. This is probably the most difficult task we have ever given ourselves, which is to intentionally transform the economic development model for the first time in human history. And we really need to start admitting that that's what all the fuss about global warming is about. It's about keeping the elites rich and the rest of the world poor.
Exactly right. That quote blew me away. I hadn't seen that until probably last week. But what more does anybody need to hear? She said it. She said, we are going to upend the current economic model, which is capitalism, market economy. And nobody can deny that whatever we've been living under for the last decades is a warped type of capitalism, and it wasn't working very well, sure. But to go to communism, which is what every sign points to when you look at their goals and their methods, and even their speeches. All it means is that the tiny technocratic elite, the people who are already super wealthy and well-positioned, they are going to run everything across the whole planet as if we're a giant group of franchises. And they're hoping to get rid of most of us in the process so that it's easier for them. So I don't know if they picture they're going to have a world playground with giant game preserves and they just hop from wilderness to wilderness. I don't know why they want this. All I can think is they seem like super villains. Their brains are warped. I don't know. Why they can't just enjoy their wealth and let us live in peace, I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to go with power, though, because, we use the example, say, of someone like Bono, who, is a very, very wealthy man. He has it all. What is it? Why does he want to, get involved in all of this globalist nonsense? And I think it comes back to power, uncontrolled power, being so capable of corrupting somebody, and they just get so carried away, and it is demonic, it is satanic.
That's what I was going to say. You can't help but think there's some kind of spiritual element at play here, maybe a dark type spirituality, because it is so unhuman to want that level of control and power over others. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, keep going. You're right.
And what a strange thing, Bono, the rock star. How did he even get caught up in it? And you wonder how they make these associations. I suppose he was just handy for them during the time of all those Live Aid concerts and all of that. You remember back in the 80s, that sort of introduced our generation to the idea that, oh, we have to help save the world. We have to donate our money to feed every poor person across planet Earth. So that was the beginning of my indoctrination, I would say. Mm-hmm. And so Bono was a star of that. I guess maybe that's why he's still out front and center for people my age to go, oh, look, Bono still thinks it's a good idea. Maybe I should too. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we were all reared on that. And, but you look at Africa now and what they have achieved, absolutely nothing. So that has all been a complete failure. But just going back to Agenda 21 and sustainable development, and anyone who doesn't know what Agenda 21 is at this stage, it's obviously, it was devised by the UN as a plan for the 21st century, and at its core is depopulation. But there's so many really good documentaries, videos on YouTube still about it. So, New World Order, One World Government, Agenda 21, these are the key words that you look out for. But some of the terminology, Polly, like social justice, a lot of these phrases are meaningless as well. Equality, affordable housing, anything with friends of is usually a bit of a sign that this is the globalists at work. Mm-hmm. Quality of life, watershed, facilitator, traffic calming. I know you've got a big issue with these bike lanes. What's this about?
I don't know. It just drives me crazy because most places don't have the weather to have bicycles most of the year. And so to put businesses out of business, to remove parking, to congest the roads, all for the sake of 5 people, maybe, who might use these bike lanes. It's just outrageous. I don't have anything against bikes or using bikes to get to work. Don't get me wrong, but we weren't built for it. And it seems like just a way someone described it to me as they're just making an obstacle course of green tape to frustrate everyone, increase the tension in your city, put people out of business, and pit people against one another, because there's definitely groups of cycling supremacists who kind of come out and will fight you tooth and nail when you say anything bad about a bike lane, for goodness sake. I'm sure you've seen it. Every topic has its guard dogs, doesn't it?
Completely. And they're particularly aggressive over here. I wonder, is George Soros giving them little brown envelopes? Because it's not that George Soros wants us to be out on our bikes. It's all about banning. They want to move towards banning cars.
Yep.
Because they don't want us to be independent. They want us to travel on public transport. That's why bus lanes are, they're always being pushed as well, much to the infuriation of motorists, and just all of the normal things, the things we take for granted in a free society. That is what they are trying to take from us. So yeah, I think there is a move, definitely. We know that they're moving to try and ban cars, but this is where it's going.
Yeah, I was reading, I don't know if you paid attention in the United States to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. Mm-hmm. I have a paragraph here from, this really creeped me out, a magazine called Vox, which is a mainstream lefty publication. They mentioned that the main goals are achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions, creating jobs, providing for a just transition. I mean, look at that meaningless phrase. Providing for a just transition. What is that? What does that even mean? Securing clean air and water. And then he mentions the next priority is going to be tackling cars, like we just said. That's a huge problem. But here's the part that really got to me. He's saying he understands that Green New Deal proponents are spooked about being seen as anti-rural, but have no fear. These kinds of plans from the left always include education, training, and transition assistance for rural communities hurt by decarbonization. Meaning, don't worry, we'll take care of those hicks in the countryside. We'll train them. We'll re-educate them. We will help them move to the city. I just thought that was very creepy, especially because he wraps up by saying, they should also remember the core demographics live in cities and are engaged in urban issues, meaning we only have to please the city dwellers. I mean, they're selling this Green New Deal to a group, and that's already the youth and the cool people in the cities, and we don't have to worry about anyone who opposes, I mean, the absolute rejection of a whole segment of society, I want to use the word evil again, because this is what you think of. It's what I think of when I imagine how people got to the Nazi Germany level, where they were just so able to just dehumanize, write off, dispose with a whole segment of the population, you know? I feel the same here.
Yeah, and I suppose they like cities because people are less likely to know each other in cities. You know, they're less likely to get to know each other. And you have this sort of anonymity that goes on in a city. Whereas in the countryside, you're much more likely to know your neighbours and see your neighbours and talk to your neighbours and maybe share ideas about how crazy the globalists are with your neighbours. So I think that's another part of the plan, isn't it, Polly?
It could be part of the plan. And I also wonder if it has to do with them not being able to get their Internet of Things smart city type of setup rurally. It would be too difficult. But in the city, they can, and they can keep track of us. And they seem to be obsessed with tracking waste for some reason. And it's harder, I guess, in the country. I mean, in the city, you can't have a bonfire in your yard and get rid of your waste, but you can in the country. I don't know, but they're obsessed with moving people from the countryside into the cities. That's for sure.
Obsessed. Yeah, obsessed. Yeah. And just getting back to the smart, the notion of everything being smart, and it's the exact opposite to what it actually is. But you were looking at somebody today, I think she was in the States, talking about her apartment. Just explain that and her smart, the app that was going to let her into her apartment. And she said, no,
right.
she'd rather just continue to use her keys.
Is the connection okay, by the way, Gemma?
It's okay, my end. Is it okay with you?
Yeah, seems fine from here. I just wanted to check. Yeah, there's an internet security expert, I think she is, who was talking about the fact that she lives in a big city in a nice apartment building, and she got a notice from her landlady or whatever saying that they were going to be switching to some kind of app for unlocking your door, or I don't know if it was a thumbprint or some other kind of scanner. And she didn't want this because it's going to be so interconnected to the other data collection things in the building. She didn't want that type of invasion of privacy. And she's an expert on this. So she spoke with the landlady, and they told her there was not going to be any way of opting out. Plus, it was going to be attached to her thermostat. Plus, there was going to be cameras that the security or the central office of this chain of apartment buildings was going to be able to view their door 24/7, keep track of it 24/7. I think there was another aspect, but her concern is also that they don't always unlock. Sometimes they have glitches and you can't, I mean, with a key, you stand a better chance. In this case, you would have to call in the text to open your door. The landlady told her there's no opting out, and it's going to be going in at 40,000 units across her city or the state or wherever she is, and nobody has any choice in the matter. So how quickly they can put this into place? I mean, that's one person's experience. Can you imagine? It might take only a year to change every lock in the city to that sort of system.
I mean, and then just insane. Yeah, and the reason they gave was so that, you know, it saves people fumbling around in their purses for their keys. I mean, that's the best they could come up with, when it's quite clear, you know, they have an agenda at play, and it's all about monitoring, surveillance, control. We know where you are at any given time of the day, or we know whether you've left your apartment, when you've come back.
Exactly.
That's what it's about.
How invasive is that?
People, and especially young people now, you know, in their 20s, who are being, you know, going into these modern apartment blocks, they just need to be so careful, because they are the generation that have been brainwashed by the liberal universities. They are, you know, they're the most damaged people, I think, by this cult of globalism. And they just give away their freedom so easily. I suppose because they can't really dream of a future. They can't dream of having a home, a decent home with a garden, having a family. Everything is turned upside down. They don't know, you know, what their culture is. They don't know, you know, they just can't plan a future.
They used to be able to follow that tried and true path, or at least it was always there for them if they wanted to. You know, all young people think they're going to go to the big city and they're going to have whatever, become a singer or some big roaring success stockbroker. And a lot of people try that for a very little while, and they used to come back to the more rural or suburban lifestyle and realize how good it was. You know, I mean, it was simple, it was comfortable, and you had your friends there, and you could build something there. But they have kind of eliminated that possibility for people, as I think mainly by making housing so unaffordable. They've turned housing into a commodity, right? And we all have foreign investment in our real estate. So the young people don't, you're right. What other thing is there for them except for succeeding in the cities? And the cities are becoming increasingly uncomfortable. And I think many of them have the view that if they just adhere strictly enough to these parameters that are always being advertised to them on TV and through songs and by stars, that maybe they'll find happiness in being a good little conformist. You know, maybe they'll get rewarded. I don't know. I'm waiting for them all to rebel.
Yeah, you'd really hope they would. But again, they are so indoctrinated. And we've had a couple of incidents over the weekend here in Ireland. There was a protest outside the home, God forbid, of the Minister for Health, who is, you know, it's unimaginable what this man has presided over. But needless to say, people are dying as a result of the health policy inflicted upon the public by this man, he's just another of these he's a child, you know, he's like our current Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. They're children, that they're puppets of this globalist cult, and they've just been put into these positions and they don't know what they're doing. But there was a protest outside his home, which I don't know, was it a real protest? Was it a fake? Was it a false flag? Was it to generate sympathy for him? But the media all day, you know, have been, oh, it's absolutely disgraceful, and how dare they, and this is, no matter what he's done, this should never happen. And you just think, yeah. And I was, your video the other day, Polly, I was thinking about it, where you talk about this fake mob, where, and it's such a brilliant video. What did you call it, Polly?
I don't know. It was my second last one.
It's your second last, exactly.
Who are these idiots? Did I call it Who Are These Idiots?
Yeah, who are these idiots? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's so like you're basically saying a lot of this is it's just fake. It's just created by Twitter, and it's to make people frightened to speak out, because I'm sure most rational Irish people were thinking it's good enough for him. You know, that the health system is a catastrophe because it has to be as part of the globalist plan. And there's no reason why we couldn't have an excellent health service in Ireland. We could have one in the morning, actually, if these lunatics were not in power. But so, you know, and he's been out whinging about being imprisoned in his own home, and
oh my goodness.
But the outcry from the media, I mean, there was a handful of people, you know, standing with a few banners, but this has been sort of the big tragedy of the day. It's a bit like when I raised the fact that a non-citizen failed asylum seeker is seeking to represent the people of Dublin in the upcoming local elections. And the reaction to that from the fake mob, when most people, normal people, were saying, it's insane. How can a person who is not a citizen represent people at local government? Not to mind the fact that she's a failed asylum seeker from Malawi. You know, that's what normal people say. They're like, what?
Yeah.
So just explain that to me.
Well, I feel like the longer it goes on, the harder it is for normal people to even remember what normal is, right? And that's the plan, I think. They have, it's huge business, generating fake mobs of people. And of course, online, this is way easier, but I do think they do it somewhat in real life too. I think they kind of have these people they call on, whether they're union members or whatever they are, I don't know, that can turn up in a couple of days' notice to any scene and make it look like public opinion is firmly on the one side of any given issue. And you notice it's always on the globalist side, no matter how outrageous, no matter if it makes them the biggest hypocrites in the world, all it is a numbers game. And so they generate armies of these bots or AI, or sometimes it is real people behind multiple accounts. And they go out there and they berate us all into silence. They make us think we must be wrong because there's only one of me and there's 25 of them, but it's all fake. And people have to just hang on to the knowledge that you are smart. If your moral compass is anywhere decent, you are normal. You're just fighting for what's normal to fight for, the good health of your children and yourself, space to live unmolested by these crazy rules, the right to say a woman is a woman and a man is a man, for goodness sake, the right to keep sexual education away from your kids until you feel they're ready for it, all these things, the right to control your own body in the healthcare system, the right to have national borders. These are normal things, and people have to just cling to that and ignore the armies of bots and trolls and these union members who are out there paid to make it look like you're the one in the wrong. It's number one priority for me is breaking that down.
Exactly. And people, I think once they get over their fear of speaking out about it, because once you've been called a racist 20 times, it actually doesn't, it has no meaning. Maybe the first time is really shocking because you're not a racist. Like, what? Yes. Me, yeah. Racist? It is. It's like, but then, as they say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And, once people get over that initial, they will find it so liberating because they're expressing what they think. There's nothing worse than, keeping your thoughts, that's how you go crazy, inside your head, not being able to express them, and to feel that, you're going to be censored at every single turn. So when you do come out and start saying this whole thing is absolutely insane, and of course, women are women and men are men, and that's the way it was designed at the beginning of time, and it will always be that way. And there are only two genders. And once, other people then will say it's safe to say that. I can't believe that we even have to utter these words, Polly.
Right. I can't believe it either. But it is absolutely necessary because they aren't slowing down with their propaganda. So we can't stop saying it either. We have to keep saying just normal things. And it feels silly saying these normal things. I will periodically tweet out my women have vaginas and men have penises comment, just because it's amazing how popular that is to just say that for real. But you made a good point too, that you do start to go crazy if you are not allowed to say truthful things. If you feel like your voice can never be heard, the cognitive dissonance, the internal stress. I mean, we know that the suicide numbers are going up. It's really bad apparently for white men, but I've just recently heard that it's now white women are racing to catch up with the white men. And gee, I wonder why. I can't possibly think what might be accounting for that. We have been told to shut up. We have been told we are racist. We have been told we have privilege and that our voices are done. They wish we would die. They wish we would all just die. And
the reason is because we are the people who have demanded the most from, we demand, we don't, like, compared to the rest of the world, even though we've done a really bad job of it, but we do tend, because we live in the first world, to demand our rights more than those in the developing world. And that's why they want us silenced and obliterated. And that's why they're doing what they're doing to Europe, which is, within our culture, the cradle of our civilization. Of our cultures, it's
we present them the biggest obstacle. We're going to always fight them. We're as smart as they are, we're as savvy. We're used to this culture. We've been educated in our rights and the law, and we know how to read their code, so to speak. Whereas people brand new to liberal Western values don't have a clue, and they probably won't ever be educated into how to how to understand their rights the way we do. You know, they just want our level of intellect and tenacity, I think, to just die out. I think we provide.
I mean, and they come from such brilliant cultures themselves, you know, and they must come here and think, what's all this crazy LGBT stuff about? What,
Yeah.
you know, but they have to go along with it to get their, you know, their social housing or whatever. And they must be thinking these Westerners are even more bonkers than we thought they were.
And I had an experience, I don't know if we've talked about this. My father, before he died, lived in an area of Toronto that was very, very heavily populated with people from the Middle East. And over the 10 or 20, I forget how long he lived there. But over the years, it got more and more. He was definitely a minority by the time he did die. And just to go along with what you were saying about the cultural differences, I didn't think anything of it, but I noticed on the very last trip I went to get in the elevator, and they wouldn't get in the elevator with me. And I thought, I just thought, oh, maybe they're being polite. Maybe they're waiting for someone. But no, it's because I was wearing shorts and I'm female, and they would not get in. And I took the elevator by myself all the time, because that's how extremely different their culture is from ours. So yeah, I don't know how they handle seeing gay people and that out on the street holding hands or on the television. They must just lose it in private, because they won't even get on the elevator with a woman in shorts. So,
you know, and then you got the perfect ingredients for, you know, a culture clash.
Major.
And globalists are creating it all and sitting back and laughing. They won't hopefully have the last laugh, but yeah, I mean, that you're so right. I saw earlier something you had tweeted about how activists, LGBT activists now are demanding that companies advertise LGBT behaviors in their, you know, in promoting their companies, or else they lose rankings. They might not get most gay friendly company.
Yeah. Well, imagine that. They've given it must be a very powerful lobby group, because they've given the big corporations this ranking list. They rank them every year, and they judge them on such things as whether they have LGBT representation in their adverts and their pamphlets and things like that. And yeah, I guess it solves part of the mystery as to why all the corporations seem to be pandering so much. They're obviously getting ranked by all these different groups as to how well they bend to the will of the people. But it still strikes me as odd why they would choose to throw away a normal business strategy for this identity politics strategy, you know?
Well, I suppose they can't expand, can they? They can't become global.
That's true.
Yeah, they won't. You know, they'll stay small, and small is bad. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, they're saying what's more, you notice that TV ads are increasingly likely to feature same-sex couples, and corporations are increasingly likely to promote their support of LGBT causes. I'll tweet this out later myself. It's very interesting, but I have noticed, like, we're getting there's a huge amount of development going on in Dublin at the moment. It's actually frightening. It's totally unnecessary. But it's all part of this plan to create this smart city so they can corral people into these tiny apartments and have control over them. But I've noticed, like, you see the boarding around these new developments, and invariably the people that they're using to advertise them you look at them twice and you have to think, is that a man or a woman? They have this trans look about them. And then they're a shade of, you know, certain, not the
coffee color, because you don't know.
Coffee, not the pale white Irish freckled skin, you know.
Right.
And you just think, what? Like, they're it's total indoctrination. Again, you know, I keep note. I think once you start seeing it, you just, you know, it's everywhere. I don't know, did I mention about the Lego film? Did I say that this already, if I'm repeating myself?
No.
Well, the Lego film is big here now at the moment. They're promoting it. And you just look at the advertisements on buses and, you know, you see the unicorns, which is the symbol of transgenderism. The little Lego figures have the sort of transgender haircut, which is, you know, frighteningly common around the streets of Dublin at the moment, and in Ireland, you know, this
It's
sort
so
of
mind-boggling.
swept
Why
over.
do they want everyone to be identical? And why are so many people willing to give up their individuality to fit into the Borg? It is the kind of science fiction nightmare that we all grew up with. They warned us about it all the time. And it was like, you would never want this. We all agreed you would never want this. And now we are building it. It's mind-boggling. And sometimes I do get quite upset because it's all encompassing. It's from every angle, every area of life.
Yep.
All at once.
Yeah, completely. And I'm just going to show you that this new YouTube for kids that they introduced. Of course, I'll probably have my channel shut down again now. Anyway, I'll give it a blast. But this is the new YouTube for kids. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this, but hopefully you can.
Yeah.
So we have a little unicorn. There are lots of unicorns in that. You see the little, I don't know, is it a sort of an emu or whatever? He's
ostrich or something? We can only see that one side. You can't see the unicorn.
What is this thing doing on it? Whatever, with his blue hair. And all of the rainbow colors is the clenched fist of communism.
Wow.
And you've got more, you see the unicorn there, and, you know, like this this is appalling propaganda. I am pleading with parents to resist this, to stand up to this. They have to. I mean, these unicorns are everywhere. And because the unicorn has no gender, this is, you know, the symbol of transgenderism. It's everywhere now. And parents have to start saying no.
It's so hard as a parent to... I feel like this is one of the biggest wedge issues. It's going to affect almost every family, I think, because you're going to ask your kid to be almost one person at school and a different person at home is what it's going to come down to. Because the kid has to be there all day in school by themselves, unrepresented by their parents, right? So they're going to have to play along all day with this enculturation into the trans stuff and other things, you know, the panic about the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't all go along with the climate change thing. And how do you deal with this as a parent? If you say, oh, that's all garbage, which I recommend you do, I recommend you be brave and say it. Mm-hmm. But your kid goes then to school and says, oh, my mom and dad said that's all garbage. Suddenly the kid is an outcast or even being punished. Or in Ontario, Canada, we had a rule where if you didn't support the child psychologically in terms of their sexuality, they could come and take away your child. And so would that be enough? You know, if a kid came to school and said, my mom says trans is garbage, could they come knocking on my door because I'm not psychologically supporting the child's gender journey or whatever they say? You know, they're driving a wedge, I think, between parents and children because it's almost irresistible. I can see a lot of parents just shutting up and going along with what the school wants because it's too hard to fight them. It's too awkward.
Mm-hmm. And because communists hate the family, because the family is the primary source of education, it should be. And that's why they, you know, it's been a long time coming. It's gradual. But, you know, divorce, look at divorce rates in the US. I'm sure Canada is nearly as bad. You know, the UK, it's all about break up the family and we will implement our communist plan. Yeah, you're so right. I had a letter recently from a parent who told me that her child had come home from school. I think the child was fairly young, 5 or 6, maybe a little bit older, and had said that today in school, we are told that we had to gather around in a group, and we were told that whatever is said in the classroom stays in the classroom. And they
Wow.
had to define their 4 or 5 characteristics that they didn't like about themselves, right?
Oh, yikes.
To do this in front of, a group of your peers, 20, 25 kids, when you're that age, 6, 7, 8, like that is asking for trouble, because kids
Yeah.
go out that, they don't mean to be mean, but they are mean to each other. So
Right.
these kids had to sit here and sit there and say, well, I don't like the fact that I have, whatever, red hair and
Oh, that is
freckles. That's probably
horrible.
racist. But and so they're exposing themselves in that way. And then out in the playground, the bully has great opportunity.
That's exactly it. They have given the kids a list of the vulnerabilities to use to pick on.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. I mean, that is actually stage 1 of a cult, of building a cult, of breaking down the individual to get them vulnerable, to then help them feel better and get them loyal to you, and then get them to do all kinds of crazy things. Literally, that is the first step. My God, that's disturbing.
It's child abuse. It's child abuse.
That is
and
unreal.
I mean, they got away with it in the past. I've made this point before, with sexual abuse, of producing an entire generation of very scarred people. Now they can't get away with that as much. So they're doing this LGBT stuff, all of the, teaching pornography and that. And there was a bit of an outburst by the mainstream lovies today, I noticed on Twitter, where they were talking about the fact that they never got any sex education and how damaged they all are as a result of it. And
that's big here right now too.
Is it?
They're throwing that same fit right here in my province in Ontario, because we have a premier who got elected on, part of his mandate was he was going to roll back the changes to sex ed. He was going to make them more sensible again, to take a lot of the trans stuff out, and I forget the other changes. They were good though. Most people wanted them. That's part of the reason he got elected. So yeah, they're doing the same thing. Oh, if I hadn't had sex ed, I didn't have it when I was young. We can't take it away from these kids. Yeah, there's mass hysteria over it.
Mass hysteria.
Yeah,
because they know, again, they've been told by their globalist masters that parents are copping on to this. Parents in Ireland, increasingly parents contact me and say, I've taken my kids out. I'm not having this. I'm not having this. These children are being indoctrinated. I want them to go to school and learn about English history and, their own culture. But no, they're being taught about all this crazy transgenderism. And they're taking their kids out. So this is why you have these little outbursts from the mainstream media. They're under orders from their masters to say, sex education, and we're going to be intensifying it now, bringing in pornography, masturbation, God only knows what. And
it's so over the top crazy. I mean, they really are bringing pornography into the young classrooms. They're talking about consent. They're talking about things that I don't even feel comfortable saying to you as an adult.
Absolutely.
It's scary.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fact that we even have to say these words is disgusting, that we even have to bring up these topics. Nothing is taboo. I mean, nothing, we saw this woman over the weekend on Twitter, naked and saying that something about her rights, that, modesty. What is it? That modesty now is an infringement on women's rights.
Oh my God! I missed that episode. Thank God.
Oh, you're very fortunate. You're very, very fortunate. I don't know. The brainwashing is frightening. Polly, more solutions. We have to keep on working on the solutions before we.
We do.
What do you feel works?
I wish I had better answers. I think being brave, though, and taking the first step and saying something when you're not sure about the person that you're talking to. I had a positive experience in real life not too long ago, where I had been being very politically correct with someone that I know, and she with me. And then one day guess we'd known each other for about a year. We were out for a walk, and a situation presented itself. And she said the first thing, it's about the demographic change in our neighborhood. And I never thought in a million years it would be safe to mention it even to her. But she said the first thing. And then I immediately, like, she could tell I was happy she had brought it up. And so we got to talk. And you see, I all it takes is that one step, and then the ice is broken and you realize, oh, thank God we don't have to pretend anymore. So that's really big, but it's scary. I mean, I come on here all the time and I speak my mind, and I speak my mind on Twitter, but out there where the real consequences can happen, like in my neighborhood, I'm very shy. I'm just as shy as probably everybody else, but I'm trying to force myself to get over it. And we have to.
Yeah, no, it like, I do feel that people are more inclined to speak about it, definitely in Ireland. You know, they are, because they know it's so abnormal, and but, you know, again, it is very hard for people, because there'll always be people within the family or within, you know, close knit friendships, and that you know, you may have to say, you know, ne'er the twain will meet, and if that means, you know, we can't have this friendship anymore, so be it. I mean, I've reached the point where saving this country is the most important thing, because if we are in the position where we are awake to it, we have an obligation and a duty to waken up the rest of the country, and it is very hard. It's very hard for people to accept that they have been duped.
Yeah.
Those who have gone along with this programming and, you know, doing all this, I mean, the recycling, we all are, you know, recycling, but, you know, you can go over the top about it as well. But, you know, who are going the extra step and you know, doing all the UN stuff and the climate change stuff with their children. I mean, it's hard for them to say, yeah, I've been duped.
Yeah, there is a phrase, I think, it's harder to convince a man he has been fooled than to fool him in the first place, right? And I think that's really true, because there's this element of shame involved. If you've been taken for a ride, you don't want to admit it. You know, I think that a great thing is to just find that one moment that woke you up, and then find a great video or even a meme to share with people, because it just takes the one magic spell-breaking moment, you know. Solutions, again, I think getting involved in local politics, like we've talked about.
I can't see a more important solution than that.
And maybe also something that's different between Ireland and Canada, I think, is the level of religion that the community still has. Canada is more or less atheist, I would say. Agnostic, maybe, but we have very, very few people of faith. So we don't have that to rally around, and we don't have that as a guiding principle as much, maybe, as Ireland. Maybe that accounts for why it's so difficult to bring people together here and just to talk through a moral, because it's very, very laissez-faire here. Liberalism seems like a religion here, almost, you know?
That's very true. I mean, and that is the one thing, you know, that Ireland does still have. It's not far. You know, my generation, we were all weird in the Christian faith. And, you know, I had a really good experience of it, and it is important to me. I'm not a holy Joe by any means, but I think if you had a good experience of the faith growing up, you hold on to it, and it is a blessing. And we are so blessed still in this country to have a good, solid Christian base. We have so many beautiful churches, you know, that are empty. I went into one today, and, you know, it's the place you can go to, and compared to the mayhem of a shopping center, and just go in and sit in the silence and light a candle and, you know, remember how important Christianity is to our culture. I'm actually reading a book at the moment called How the Irish Saved civilization. I don't know if they're going to this occasion, but it's basically, it's a really interesting book, and it's talking about how, you know, when the European civilization was on the brink the last time, how the Irish monks saved all of the documents, the manuscripts, and you know, rewrote them, and you know, we were responsible for preserving you know, this amazing Christian culture in many ways. And the Irish people, I think they need to get the Catholic Church, you know, it's non-stop Catholic bashing. And of course, the Catholic Church has major sins. The Catholic Church has been infiltrated by communists. There's no doubt about that. It's been infiltrated by George Soros. You know, the Archbishop of Dublin has serious questions to answer about his position on globalism. So does the current Pope. They're pushing, you know, the Pope is pushing this agenda, but the Pope is he might be the head of the church, but the church is made up of the people. And, you know, most decent Christians, you know, they want to preserve what is brilliant about Christianity. And, you know, Irish people should not be ashamed to celebrate that. It's intrinsic in our culture. Christianity is, no matter what all the lunatics say, it is an intrinsic part of our culture, and we should not let it go. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. And this is not a lecture from the pulpit by any means. But, you know, I think it is the one thing, it gives us great freedom, and it is the one thing that people can hold on to in these terribly dystopian times. They can hold on to the hope of something greater and a truth that is undeniable. I'm starting to sound like a religious freak now, so I'll shut up.
Oh, no, it's beautiful testimony, because you're right. It's historical. It goes to the very depths of who each individual person is. It's something, it's a rock to hang on to. And the Irish people should, in my opinion, take advantage of that. The long history. And like you said, you have so many beautiful churches. The monuments to it are already there. The meeting place is already there. The common history is already there. And don't lose it, you know.
I mean, these churches, you know, if we don't stop it, they will be mosques. Be in no doubt. They will be turned into mosques. I was talking to somebody recently about a new development that's in progress in Ireland at the moment, and the mosque has been planned. There's no talk of any church going in, but the mosque is in the plans. You know, this is unbelievable. Irish people have to say, no, do we want to live under Sharia law? Because it is coming. Be in no doubt. And I have to keep repeating and stressing this, but it is true. Because the numbers, you know, we are not going to be able to sustain the volume of Muslims. When I talk about we, I'm talking about native Irish people. We're not going to be able to sustain the numbers coming in and sustain our own culture.
They just take over certain segments, certain neighborhoods. You can see it in Australia. It's definitely happened in France, in Germany. At Sweden. That's what they do. They conglomerate. They make kind of a ghetto, for lack of a better word. And that's it. There's Sharia patrols on the street, like in the UK. Police tell women, don't walk down there, you'll upset them. You know, is that what you want in your country? Anywhere in your country? The 2 tiers? I mean, 3 really, because you'll always have the elites above everything. But then you'll have the Muslim tier, which has a whole different set of rules, and yours, which is the bottom of the heap, really. People can't put up with this.
No. I mean, there's a great account on Twitter, Peter Sweden, and I'd encourage anyone, because it is going to come here. But, you know, and the mainstream media are not covering what is happening in beautiful Sweden. Sweden is a no-go country at this stage. I mean, every single day there are bombs and explosions. Malmo is like a war zone at times, the city of Malmo. I was looking at pictures of its local market, and you might as well be in Islamabad. you know, there was a bombing in Malmo last night. You know, five women sexually assaulted in Uppsala this weekend, 4 bombings in 24 hours.
Wow.
There's some really horrific figures about the number of women, Swedish women, that have been sexually assaulted. And
you know, they cover that up too. They cover that up with another one of their false things that they're doing. They'll say, well, we've done this Me Too movement. And because of Me Too, the reports of sexual assaults are actually much higher. But they blame Me Too, not what's actually causing the assaults. You know, it's mind-bendingly sadistic to do that to the young women. To say, oh, no, there's not more of it. You guys are just more sensitive about reporting now.
Yeah, that's the excuse. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, the 47% of women in Sweden are afraid to go outside alone in some areas.
Wow.
7,840 reported rapes last year, a new record high. It has the second highest number of rapes in the world per capita. This is Sweden, what was one of the safest countries in the world. And 40,000 women have been genitally mutilated. And it has the world's first feminist government. So there you go. That's what it says, all you need to know about feminism.
That's disgusting.
It's frightening. It is frightening beyond belief. I think, Polly, we might, I think we've covered quite a lot. I hope we've stuck to the general, I know I go off on tangents, but I think we've stuck to the general theme of how, you know, everything to do with sustainable development must be avoided at all costs. Don't feel guilty about, you know, environment, all of this. We do our best for our environment, but nature will always fight back. And the reason nature seems to be in danger at the moment is because there's so much fakery and so much artificial nonsense going on, and nature will fight back. Nature heals itself. So I don't think we need to worry so much, you know, about all of this environmental
about snowstorms and things.
Snowstorms. Exactly. But I mean, it's certainly a subject that we will come back to. But the key message, once again, is that people have to get up, get off their keyboards and, you know, run for these upcoming local elections, take back control, because otherwise the dystopia is going to get worse. Polly, is there anything you would like to say before we finish up?
Oh, just thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be on. You're such a smart woman, and I'm delighted.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You are enlightening so many of us. And if Canada ever gets too much, you'll always have a home in Ireland. Although I can't promise that it'll be any different, unfortunately. But no,
well, here we have lots of wilderness. We'll go build a cabin in the woods.
That's a plan. That is definitely a plan. Well, you'll definitely be back on with me again soon, Polly. But in the meantime, take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And thanks to all of our listeners this evening, our viewers. I just want to remind people that Ben Gilroy is back in court tomorrow. I think it's court 12 of the High Court. He's on, I think, at 11 o'clock. So Ben has been released on bail. There should be some interesting developments there. You will be aware of the fact that he was sent to Mountjoy Prison for basically describing it as it is in terms of the legal system in Ireland being composed of semi-secret societies, etc. So you should try to get down to the courts tomorrow if you can to support Ben. Hopefully he will be released and this will be the end of all of this nonsense and dreadful waste of taxpayers' money, etc. So for the moment, I leave you on that note. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll be back again soon. Good evening.